Umaga po sa ating lahat. We're so blessed with a series of music that has been offered to the Lord by virtue of our singing. Salamat sa Panginoon na meron tayong annual Bible and Missions Conference kung saan sisilipin natin ang mandate ng Panginoon sa atin. Hindi lang mga individual believers, kundi as institutions and churches, those especially. So the task given to me is actually revolving around this theme of RESOLUTE, proclaiming the changing gospel in today's changing culture. And so I entitled my part, Built Up in the Messiah, the enduring hope of the gospel. And our key verses this morning is from Colossians 1:21 to 23. But let me inform you that although we begin with these key verses, we will be thinking and reflecting from the 4 chapters of the book, especially focusing on the whole chapter of Colossians 1. And so, by looking at the title, I think you initially recognize that the main title speaks about foundation, built up in the Messiah. But it is intentional to translate Christos into Messiah, because in my talk I'll be using Christ, Messiah, or King interchangeably. Because in the first place, I want us to realize that Christ is never a title. It's never a name, I should say, but rather a title. And it speaks about the anointed King, or the Messiah of Israel. From this foundation, we draw our footing as Christians today, or Gentiles in general, and that is the enduring hope of the gospel. In other words, the foundation that is in the Messiah is actually the foundation of our gospel. In fact, the Messiah is our gospel because He is the embodiment of the gospel, and therefore we stand on this ground as we think of our mandate from the Lord. Built up in the Messiah, enduring hope of the gospel. And so some introductory matters. Why RESOLUTE? Why this theme that we have? Proclaiming the unchanging gospel in today's changing culture. First, I would like to appreciate the message last night. Pastor BJ shared with us a narrative, a kind of sampling of narrative preaching, a retelling of the gospel story. And I love Luke 24, one of my favorite passages in the New Testament, when the Messiah is our concern. Luke 24. I have, first of all, a question that anybody who gets the right answer, I'll give a book. Where did Luke get his messianic vision in Luke 24? There we heard from Pastor BJ that Jesus, the 2 disciples, this is a post-resurrection account, the 2 disciples on the Emmaus Road were actually discussing what had just transpired in Jerusalem. Cleopas and the unnamed disciple were conversing, and they were banking on what had just happened in Jerusalem. And Jesus inquired, "What are you talking about?" They did not recognize that the story is dependent on this person they are now conversing with, and that is the Messiah after the resurrection. And so Jesus told them, "Don't you know that the Tanakh, the Torah, the writings, and the prophets speak about me? What you're talking about is actually about me. What has just transpired in Jerusalem, actually is the embodiment of my mission. So where did Luke get his messianic conviction? Anybody? Sayang. Anyway, I'll leave that to you. If you listen to me, you'll get the hint. And you can still come back to me in first come, first serve, no? And get back to me anytime after preaching or after the session. So why resolute? Pastor BJ started working on Luke 24 in order to emphasize messianic vision on the part of Luke. And then later on, from Paul's writings, Sir Osan will be talking about being resolved in the Messiah or Him crucified. And then in the evening, hopefully, Pastor Ariel would open up the platform for our charge. Now that we understand the gospel and this is our footing as far as our mission is concerned, what's next for us? For one, why resolute? Why do we need to be resolved? What resolution should we have as Christians in our present time in order to uphold our dear commitments as far as the gospel is concerned? Here I wanted to mention some issues related to our convictions, and that is the prevailing popular Christianity of the day. We hear from our churches what we call inspirational messages, and they are not bad in themselves. But as far as therapeutic gospel is offered, and that is the concern, I think we are living within these limits and bounds of popular, non-biblical Christianity. So we don't just hear what we call prosperity gospel, but we constantly get therapeutic gospel from our pulpit. Pulpits are filled with jokes and plagiarism. Comments, we get comments that doctrines divide, I should say. So the question then is this: how do we do church ministry given the changing perceptions of people today? We do not at all discard the influence of other disciplines. For instance, the application of the study of neuroscience into biblical studies. The emphasis has been to understand behavioral patterns and perceptions, and then read back into the text. Perhaps we might get some new lenses and insights from the text by employing these disciplines. But be careful. Ultimately, the message is not about the contribution of neuroscience to reading the Bible or the biblical text, but rather how to decenter the Bible in our communities. It's a dilemma na hindi masyadong napapansin sa mga preaching. The message is ultimately to remove the Bible from the center of our existence. The Bible is not a good starting point in evaluating behavioral patterns, but rather science. But science is good if it fits the commitments of the text. So this is what I call a glimpse into popular Christianities of our time. So for you to follow my thought, let me move to an overview of my presentation. So I'll begin with gospel mission, and I hope I can get your attention into our reflection of the gospel for today, and God's plan to include the Gentiles in His plan of redemption. And then I'll move to the message of reconciliation, which is an Isaianic influence into the mind of the Apostle Paul, or into the substructure of Paul's theology, and we approach reconciliation as actually divine mission. And then I'll move to the mandate of proclamation or kerygma as participation by God's people in the activities of God, and as our Christians or Gentile converts performance of the gospel. Meaning we are mandated to not just embrace the gospel that is biblically passed on to us, but we have to perform it daily, to live it out, to be witnesses of this gospel ourselves by living it out daily. And so proclamation is actually perceived as participation in the work of God and performance of the gospel. And then afterwards, I will be offering some closing points and reflections. So let's begin with gospel mission and Gentile inclusion. Here I hope you'll be able to follow that I'm not just focusing on Colossians 1:21 to 23, but rather start with Colossians 1:22 and 23, forward to the bigger picture of Paul's way of theologizing. Unless we understand where Paul is coming from, as far as his vision to include the Gentiles in his ministry of proclamation, we might miss the main point of the section in Colossians 1:21, 22, and 23. Remember that Colossians is actually one of the shortest of Paul's letters. However, it is also one of the most exciting among his letters. Writing to a young, emerging, Gentile-dominated Christ assembly, discovering what it was like to believe in Jesus the Messiah and to follow Him, Paul shares their sense of wonder as he encourages the community to explore the treasures of the gospel and to order their lives accordingly. In other words, Paul's mission is not only to shape the Christ assemblies in the Asia Minor, including the church in Colossae, but rather, his mission is to shape this community's life with the gospel. And yet, it is never easy because the then world, the cosmos of Paul's time, is influenced and governed by the Roman world or the Roman imperialism. And so we have attention as far as gospel mission is concerned in Asia Minor. And so we begin with mission in cosmic tension. The then world, when I say cosmic, I'm talking about the then world, the Roman world. The Asia Minor context. So for Paul, the intention is clear: to form and shape a gospel-driven community or Messiah assembly, and to make sure that their life reflects the gospel. And yet, it is never easy because of this cosmic tension. We might be willing to parallel our situations today, and yet it's completely different. First century in comparison to 21st century. And so in this letter, we encounter Paul's vision that intends to redesign the Roman Empire, a vision that has flourished on Jewish soil in variant forms of Judaism. For Paul, there was but one true Lord of the empire. His name was Jesus, and he was the Jewish Messiah. Everything in the letter, in the book of Colossians, flows from those claims about Jesus. For instance, politics, culture, cult, spirituality, power, ethnicity, and one's moral religious heritage all come into play for Paul. And ruling over all is Jesus as Messiah and Lord, or Jesus as King and Lord. In other words, Paul's theology or Paul's meta-narrative, Paul's understanding of Judaism in relation to God's plan to include the Gentiles into this saving plan. Paul's meta-narrative boasts one central substance, and that is Jesus of Nazareth is the Lord of all. That is within the tension in the Roman world. That the emperor is known as the ruler of everything, of the then world. But now here comes the Jesus movement, the emerging one, embracing the fact that the true ruler of the cosmos is none other than the emperor. Is not the emperor, but Jesus, the Messiah and Lord. And that boast flowed from one and only one source, the resurrection of Jesus, the Messiah. And so in Colossians, Paul offers a new vision that challenges the social fabric, the political structure of the Roman world. And that is, listen, the agora, the forum or the courts, and the worship centers. So the gospel of the Apostle Paul in his mission to Asia Minor penetrates, but not only penetrates, but challenges the social, political fabric of the Roman society. The agora, where people gather, the forum, and the worship centers. And the gospel was countercultural, or say counter-political, or anti-imperial. In this sense, Paul offers not a soteriological system alone, but a comprehensive vision of life under Jesus the Messiah, or say under King Jesus. Clearly then, Paul sketched out his missional theology in the Roman world, doing so in specific context for specific communities at specific moments in his own life. Primarily and in particular, Christ's assemblies in Asia Minor. So listen to what he wrote in Colossians 1:13 and 14. He speaks about the Messiah's deliverance of those ethnicities subjected under the authority of the Roman world. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son. And in His Son, the Messiah, we have redemption, we have deliverance, which is the forgiveness of our sins. In this light, Paul uttered his prayers for the emerging Gentile community in chapter 1, verses 3 to 12. Remember na hindi si Paul ang nagplant ng church sa Colossae. Gusto niyo ng libro? Sino nagplant? Side comment lang yan. Hindi yan kasama sa libro. Sino nagplant ng church sa Colossae? Of course, we understand that the Apostle Paul did his missionary activities in Asia Minor, primarily in the center of missional activities, Ephesus. But from there, the goodness spread all over Asia Minor. Note then that the primary means of publication in the Greco-Roman world at this point in time was oral performance. Hence, Colossians was read publicly, and the reading was a forthright social, economic, and political announcement that King Jesus rules the cosmos. In other words, letters at that time were actually apostolic presents. yung prayer ni Paul sa Colossians 1:3-11. Narinig lang niya. Hindi niya nakita yung community. Dadalawin niya sila. Pero hindi siya nagplan. Pero naririnig niya all over Asia Minor, nagre-ring sa ears ng mga tao yung nangyayari sa Colossae because of the preaching of the gospel from Paul and his co-workers, primarily in Ephesus. But the news has been spreading all over the Roman world. And so his letter to the church is actually an apostolic presence in his absence. And so, Paul claims that Jesus is the originator and the telos of the creation, the goal of creation, as well as all political orders, including Romans. And so the vision begins and ends with Jesus, the Messiah. One scholar writes, the message of the letter is about unraveling the systemic forces of the cosmos and living in the freedom of a new kind of community. Let me expand that. And living in the freedom of a new kind of society or politics. But this time, the politics of the kingdom. So this leads us to the second subpoint of our first point. Gospel and Gentile inclusion. God's plan within the bounds of redemptive history. God's plan of redemption is not stuck with Israel, but God's plan is to expand the horizon of His people by including the Gentiles. This is the message of God through the servant Isaiah, that Israel will be the light to the nations. They will evangelize the world. They will gospelize the world. And yet Israel failed. But more so, the prophetic vision of the servant Isaiah speaks not of himself, but a new servant who will embody the failure of nation Israel. So now God will continue His plan in an Israelite, through an Israelite, no longer Israel as an ethnic entity, but as an Israelite in the person of Jesus the Messiah, so that this Messiah becomes the light to the nations. But with the inclusion of the Gentiles. So the drama of redemption is not just about the Jews. It's also about the inclusion of us, we who are not Jews, by virtue of our faith in the Messiah. That is the message of the book of Romans. That is the substructure of Paul's theology. So what then is the gospel message? First, the gospel exposes that human beings of all sorts, Jews and Gentiles alike, are alienated from God and one another, and have formed themselves into tribes and nations and empires. And at work in all of tribalisms and nationalisms and cosmopolitan imperial designs are the dark powers of death, the gods, the powers, and the forces of this age. The Apostle Paul calls in Colossians and Ephesians the elemental principles of this cosmos. But in Christ, the Messiah, God entered Israel's story, defeated sin and death, and conquered the powers through His life, His death on the cross, His resurrection, and His ascension to the throne of the one true God. Consequently, in our union with Christ, Jews and Gentiles can break free of their sin and captivities to become the one reconciled family of God, and so dwell in love, peace, and justice. So the ultimate vision of the redemptive drama is for God to form a community of Jews and Gentiles together to worship Him. A community of Jews and Gentiles together to worship Him. And so worship ultimately is our mission. If you allow me to echo Pastor John Piper, mission is about worship. And so one scholar writes, the central aspect of the religious significance of Colossians, the book of Colossians, 4 short chapters, is that it offers a vision of human triumph or victory in the face of an evil that can reach cosmic proportions, structural evil, systemic evil, not only in the Roman world, but even in our time. And so in Colossians, Paul perceives this mission as a priestly duty. Remember that? As a priestly, that's Jewish, as a priestly duty generated by God's grace of calling him to be a minister of Jesus the Messiah to the Gentiles. So Paul's mission is about his priestly duty to offer the Gentiles in worship to God. Romans 1 and Romans 15. Ultimately, the purpose of the book of Romans is to bring the gospel to the Gentile world and bring these Gentile converts into the worship of the one true and living God, existing in the Father, in Jesus the Messiah, and the Spirit that indwells his people. Inclusion of the Gentiles. That is Paul's priestly duty. And so Paul's missional hermeneutic is called mystery in the book of Colossians. Mysterion. Mystery. And this is Paul's term in this letter for God's plan to reconcile Gentiles with Jews, slaves with free, and all manner of social identities into one large family called Christ Assembly, or we call church. And so the impulse with the gospel, the impulse of tribalism, divisions in our communities, nationalism and imperialism at work in the dark powers of this age, is what Paul counters in his claim that these powers have been taken captive by the Messiah, paradoxically at the cross. That's the message of Colossians. A cruciform existence. By virtue of the work of the Messiah on the cross, we are now included and united with Christ, with the Messiah, alongside the Jewish people. And so Paul then can write Colossians 1 verses 1 and 2. Paul, a sent one by the Messiah Jesus, by the will of God, and Timothy, our brother, to the sanctified or set apart and faithful brothers and sisters in the Messiah at Colossae. Grace to you and peace from God, our Father. Paano isusulat ito ni Paul kung hindi niya naintindihan yung plan of redemption? He is a sent one by the Messiah Jesus to include the Gentiles in Asia Minor into God's beloved community, sanctified, saints, set apart for the worship of God, for the glory of God, the Father. So we find in these verses 1 and 2, Paul's transformed view of God through the lens of the Messiah. The same Jewish God, but now it is clarified and disclosed clearly through the lens of the Messiah. By virtue of Paul's encounter on the road to Damascus, he is now clear in understanding Judaism in the light of the Messiah. But now his new vision, or renewed, if you will, renewed understanding of Judaism is now including the Gentiles, formerly outsiders and alienated, enmeshed in idolatry, now included into the beloved community of God. the Gentile Christ assembly at Colossae were not converted through the ministry of Paul himself. Rather, it had come into existence during a period of vigorous missionary and evangelistic activity associated with Paul's efficient ministry. We find that in Acts 19. But during this missionary work in Asia Minor, Paul had not reached Colossae in the upper Lycus Valley. His daily evangelistic conversation with the people, held in the hall of Tyrannus in Ephesus, were so effective that Luke can claim that all the residents of Asia heard the word of the Lord, both Jews and Gentiles. So the Gentile Christ assemblies planted in Colossae, Laodicea, and Hierapolis were the fruit of Paul's several co-workers' efforts, especially Epaphras. Epaphras is believed to be the one who planted the church in Colossae, not Paul. And so the Gentiles in Colossae, who had once been utterly out of harmony with God, enmeshed in idolatry and slavery to sin, being hostile to God in mind and godless in their actions, have now been incorporated into the Jewish Messiah and have come to fullness of life in the one who is master over every principality and power, Jesus, the Messiah. And so, the Messiah has done all that was necessary for the salvation of the Gentiles. And so this message discloses not just Paul's priestly service to God, but Christ's followers' consequent witness in a world of destructive conflicts. And so now, let's turn to the Christological challenge. Reconciliation as divine mission. Let's begin with cosmological ground in verses 15 to 17. The scripture reads, "He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together." Here we find three important functions of the Messiah over creation. He created the world. He created the world. But actually, he is before the creation of the world. And also, he sustains the world by the word of his power. We're talking about preeminence. We're talking about supremacy. We are talking about the sufficiency of the Messiah. He is supreme. He is preeminent. And he is sufficient. That's the cosmological ground for the message of reconciliation. But again, take note, this is an Isaianic message. Paul echoing the message of Isaiah of the gospel of Yahweh that is officially given to the Jews, now extended to the nations, so that the Jews and the nations will be one people of Yahweh in worship. So to clear confusion in Colossae, the Apostle Paul states that from the creation of all things to the redemption of souls, the Messiah is Lord of all. He is both the head of creation and the head of the church. The one through whom all things were created is also the one who provides peace with God, reconciliation with God, through his blood on the cross. Here is the awe-inspiring mystery of the God-man Jesus the Messiah. And listen, he who through One scholar said, he who threw out the stars with his hands, the creating activity of Jesus, he who threw out the stars with his hands, also had nails driven through those hands to reconcile men and women who were once alienated, hostile, and evil. Could you imagine the divine mission of reconciliation, of reconciling men and women to himself? People who were once alienated, living in hostility, and apart from God. So now that we are considered holy, Gentiles, now that Gentiles are considered holy and blameless before God, through the Messiah's sinless life and sacrificial work on the cross, Christ's believers, called by Paul, are called by Paul to remember their hope in the Lord Jesus and to remain steadfast in their walk. Put together, the cross is a message of cosmic restoration. Reconciliation and peace with God is only possible because of the cross of the Messiah. Let's move to the ecclesiological focus. The scripture reads, and he is the head of the body, the church, or the Christ assembly. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell. God the Father indwelt his Son. The Spirit of God indwelt believers. What a way of putting the temple motif together in the community. And through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making reconciliation or peace by the blood of his cross. Ecclesiology cannot be separated from Christology. For it is the embodied manifestation in a universal fellowship of union with the Messiah. And inasmuch as Christology is cruciform, it reflects the cross of the Messiah. So also is ecclesiology, meaning the people of God in the Messiah have died and have been raised with Christ, the Messiah. And that universal union with the Messiah makes itself manifest in a local assembly of that union. Once again, the mystery's mission to include Gentiles. So the mystery in Colossians and Ephesians is about God's plan to include the Gentiles, now revealed in the mission of Paul. In the new creation, and fellowship emerges from this mission of the indwelt Son to reconcile the cosmos. Thus, the ecclesia, the church of the indwelt Son, taps into the Son's mission to reconcile, with the result that the ecclesia is a particular embodiment of cosmic reconciliation. The church, as a body of God's people, embodies the message of reconciling people back to God. This is our mission. It is never about offering somebody, tanggapin mo si Jesus bilang Panginoon at tagapagligtas na iyong buhay. The message of redemption is not that. The message of redemption is be reconciled to God. Be reconciled to God. Face your sins and its consequences. Be in the Messiah and be reconciled to God. It's not just about our personal relationship with the Messiah, but our communal relationship with one another in the Messiah that reconcile other people back to Him. So our mission is to cling to the message and proclaim it as our sole message. Be reconciled to God. So to treat the church simply from the angle of sociology, as an instance of an association or a club, or a place of socialization, or a political movement, will fail to see the church's fundamental essence, namely an embodied manifestation of cosmic reconciliation. The church as an entity, the polis, a community of God's people, the polis, the city that rises above the structure of society, where people can see God in the Messiah. We can be an instrument in campaigning to other people be reconciled to God. So furthermore, it is this perception of the ecclesia that alone frames the ethics of Colossians and holds theology. And that is the ethic of Colossians is an ethic of the church. This will lead me to the third point, the vertical intention. Make sure you understand this. That is our key passage, or what we call the crux interpretum. And you, the scripture reads, who once were alienated and hostile in mind. Remember that the emphasis on the mind is about the moral corruption of human being and doing evil deeds as a result of the corruption of the mind. He has now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death, in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach before him. If indeed you continue in the faith. Now, marami pong mga commentaries na nagsasabi na ito ay picture ng apostasy on the part of Christ's believers because of the conditional in verse 23. If indeed you continue in the faith, is stable and steadfast, not shifting from the hope of the gospel. Through tatlong metaphors ang ginamit ni Paul. Okay? Stable, steadfast, and not shifting. Not being convinced by the alternatives in society. That is a firm foundation. That's why we are built up in the Messiah. We are stable. We are steadfast. We are not convinced by these alternatives. We are only resolved in the gospel. But the structure is clear. Once the Apostle Paul, in contrast to now in the Messiah. Once you are alienated and hostile. So alienation and hostility is part of the cosmic tension. But now in the Messiah, you are blameless, irreproachable, new creation. That's why Paul in 2 Corinthians never said, if anyone be in Christ, he is a new creation. The Greek text says, in Christ, new creation. That's the Greek text. In the Messiah, new creation. That is the emphasis when he said, now in the Messiah you are blameless and holy and above reproach before him, before God, because ultimately the Gentile church has to be offered in this capacity before the living God. Jews and Gentiles coming together by virtue of the gospel ministry to worship God. So this one long sentence, at least from the Greek text perspective, this one long sentence, Colossians 1:21-23, begins by explaining the meaning of reconciliation from the standpoint of the Christ assembly, taking the Colossian Christ believers as examples. So the basic structure is based on a once-now contrast typical of early church proclamation connected with union with the Messiah. And so in their pre-conversion state, once the Colossian Christ believers were strange and hostile, but now in the Messiah, holy and blameless, and established and steadfast. So the if is not this conditional if in Greek, Greek, is what we call the condition of neutrality. Meaning, it's in the middle of doubt and confidence. Walang apostasy sa part ng believers. Because the saving faith is a persevering faith. So get the gospel right. You will not persevere because you miss the gospel. So there is no apostasy as far as the message of Paul to the church in Colossae is concerned. But rather, now that you are built up in the Messiah and you have the hope of the gospel, this is the one that keeps you moving and steadfast and firm, and will never be convinced by the alternatives of the world. So the alienation or estrangement of the mind inward that finds expression in outward evil actions is presumably estrangement from God or Christ. The emphasis on alienation is designed to make the Gentile Christ believers appreciate the value of adhering to the convictions enunciated by Paul in Colossians 1:15-20 about the preeminence, the supremacy, and the sufficiency of the Messiah, and the gravity of mentally withdrawing from the Messiah, not holding fast to the head. So Paul distinguishes two kinds of bodies. His body that is nailed on the cross, and now as a result, the body of believers. So the primary condition of salvation for the Christ assembly is that they stay firmly rooted in the faith and resolutely committed to the hope that they learn about the gospel. The metaphors of Paul, being stable, being firm, and not convinced by alternatives. The first metaphor connotes standing on a firm foundation. The second, as firmly located on that foundation. And the third, a refusal to be moved from that foundation, hence built up in the Messiah. So this will lead me to the last point, which is proclamation as participation and performance of the gospel. So first, proclaiming the Messiah as Lord to the Gentiles. The Apostle Paul writes, "Him we proclaim, warning everyone and teaching everyone with all wisdom, that we may present everyone mature in Christ. For this I toil, of which I have a ministry." That's the point. Struggling with all this energy that He powerfully works within me. Proclamation of the gospel. But there are two purposes in this proclamation of the gospel. The supreme proclamation of the gospel has twofold aspects or dimensions: admonishing and teaching. But listen carefully. In Greek, you don't notice it in English, but Paul said, "Him we proclaim, the Messiah we proclaim." Warning. What does that mean? The Greek word is about penetrating the mind, the noose of the moral corruption of the human being. There should be minds being set aright. That is the point of warning everyone. The gospel of the Messiah intends to set the minds aright before God. And then the teaching continues. We call discipleship. So the message then is be reconciled to God. Set your mind aright before God. And then the teaching continues. So the proclamation is about touching the mind, the corrupted mind of the people. And then we continue the discipleship so that they engage in the proclamation and participation of the message of the gospel. Finally, this commission doesn't only intend to proclaim the gospel, but to form gospel communities And so the central task is linked to a twofold emphasis of admonishing, targeting the mind, and continually educating the mind. So setting the mind aright and discipling the mind in the Messiah. The second part is performing the hope of the gospel. Paul said, "Him we proclaim." Let's focus on verse 29. "For this I toil, struggling with all his energy, that he powerfully works within me." Now Paul reflects of his ministry and his struggle. Why? He was writing this behind the bars. He was in jail. Could you imagine the vision of Paul? Targeting the mind of people. But in his case, this is a struggle because he is limited in the performance and participation of the message of hope of the gospel. Because he is in jail. So for Paul, as I close, the gospel bursts through all ethnic discrimination, all sectarian exclusivism, and the intellectual dynamics in society, denying entry into this perfection to no one who submits to the Messiah. Again, one more time, for our memory's sake, the gospel penetrates to the imperial structure of the day, the agora, the forum, and the worship centers. Because the message is this: Christ rules over all creation, including the church. And so later on, Paul writes, "And have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its Creator. Here there is no Greek, there is no Gentile and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave free, but the Messiah is all and in all. Put on them as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience." Here is disclosed Paul's clear vision of new creation, a community built up or resolved in the Messiah, performing the hope of the gospel in a world that is filled with alternatives. So Paul is moving from performance to perfection. This is the vertical intention, that he will be able to offer the Gentiles alongside Jews as perfect offering before the Lord. So let's go back to where we started as I end. Perseverance entails firm attachment to the foundation, the hope of the gospel in the Messiah. So let me bring you to closing points and reflections. Continuing in the faith means being grounded and steadily growing in the hope of the gospel. Paul's focus on perseverance is neither introspective nor about how the Christ believers hang on, but instead is on the hope of the gospel to which the Gentile Christ assembly responded in faith and obedience. In other words, they are to remain firmly attached to the foundation. Secondly, continuing in the faith means holding to the true gospel, especially in the world of alternatives. To be sure, this hope is contained in the gospel, in that Jesus now rules, but will eventually assert his rule over all. God has a claim on the whole world because God has acted in the Messiah to reconcile the whole world to himself. And continuing in the faith means proclaiming the apostolic gospel of reconciliation to all nations. In other words, salvation's scope is universal, only because Jesus the Messiah is Lord over all creation by means of the reconciliation of the cross. That gospel has been announced by God to the cosmos, and it is Paul's mission to extend that divine announcement from one city in the Roman Empire to another. Hence, to say that gospel has been announced to every creature is hyperbolic, at the level of human experience, but genuine in Paul's understanding of reality. For our reflections, let's ask these questions. How do we make sense of the biblical drama of redemption, reconciliation, or new creation in our preaching, discipleship, and community life? Once we understand God's plan of redemption, Jews and the inclusion of the Gentiles, what does that mean in our daily endeavors in the ministry? Second, what factors contribute to a truly gospel-driven life, community, and witness? And finally, a heavy one, and yet part of our reflection, and should be part of it. How can we arrive at a communal reading of redemptive history that speaks of our commitments about the gospel today? Salamat po, Panginoon. Bigyan mo kami ng panahon para pag-isipan sa isang mas malalim na paraan ang mensahe ng inyong salita. Purihin po kayo sa pangalan ng Jesus.